In 1877, a group of civic leaders in Pettus and Benton counties in west-central Missouri proposed building a narrow-gauge railroad between the towns of Sedalia and Warsaw. The railroad was completed in 1880 as the Sedalia, Warsaw and Southern Railroad, and in August of 1881 the line was sold to the Missouri Pacific Railroad and reorganized in 1891 as the Sedalia, Warsaw and Southwestern Railroad. This became known as the Warsaw Branch. The branch was standard gauged in 1902 and abandoned in 1946. This presentation covers the physical remains of the railroad in the year 2007 and highlights some of its history. This map from 1895 shows the 42 route miles of the railroad from Sedalia to Warsaw. Warsaw, located on the north bank of the Osage River, became the end of the line, in spite of the optimistic word Southern in the railroad's name. This is one of two narrow-gauge locomotives built by the Brooks Works of Schenectady, New York for the railroad. This engine was a 260 wheel arrangement with 18 by 24-inch cylinders and is shown here with caboose number 500 leaving Sedalia with the last narrow-gauge train on August the 2nd, 1902. The 1892 timetable shows the single mixed train times at the individual stations. When the line was first opened, it was served by two trains. One, a mixed freight train, and the other, an express passenger train. This modern-day view of the Union Pacific Main Line from the Washington Street Bridge in Sedalia shows the Warsaw Branch roadbed on the left. The line passed under the bridge and turned south, just past the old Missouri Pacific Freight House, and then paralleled the Missouri, Kansas, and Texas Railroad main line. Here we see the same location as it was on August the 31st, 1946. This is the last departure of the last train to Warsaw, as the line was going to be abandoned. Here we see Missouri Pacific locomotive number 2644 doing the somber honors of ferrying the last train. On a cold winter day in 1937, the train from Warsaw arrives at the Sedalia station. Here, connections could be made with the through trains of the Missouri Pacific Railroad. Notice the Falstaff sign on the old building on the right. Over 70 years later, trains still arrive daily in Sedalia, but the Warsaw branch sees only the passengers of ghost trains. Can you make out the old Falstaff sign on the same building? The narrow-gauge railroad built its depot on 5th Street in Sedalia, about 200 yards west of the Katy Depot. Seen here are the rails of the branch embedded in the asphalt of 5th Street. The depot was located across the street to the right of the tracks in the now vacant lot. The grade can be seen curving ahead to where a small turntable was located to turn the engines. The rails then crossed Broadway, which in the 20th century became Highway 50, where a substantial bridge was built in the 1920s. To the left is the Katy Railroad main line, now the Katy Trail, and ahead is the Warsaw Branch line, crossing the highway bridge. On the last day of operation, August 31st, 1946, we see locomotive 2644 crossing the Highway 50 bridge on its return journey from Warsaw for the very last time. The branch line rails continued to parallel the Katy Railroad until they crossed the Katy at 13th Street. Here we see the crossing point with the Katy Trail continuing to the right and the branch line straight ahead. In this 1940s view, we see engine 2644 crossing the Katy at 13th Street. To the left can be seen a metal gate that was swung over the branch approach and kept locked. When the Missouri Pacific trains wanted to cross the Katy, they used a line-side telephone to call the Katy dispatcher, who gave them the necessary permission to unlock the gate and cross the Katy line. In the very early days, a watchman was employed to control the safe passage over the crossing. South of 13th Street, the line passed into rural Sedalia, where today evidence of the old grade is easily seen. This is the view at 18th Street. As it proceeds south, the line is a landmark in many a suburban Sedalian's backyard. The first major stream encountered by the builders was Flat Creek, about 3 miles south of the 5th Street station. Here, a large 172-foot-long double-truss Howe iron bridge was built. This bridge, rebuilt in 1889, is still in use today as a single-lane road bridge. The original 1880 stone piers are a testimony to the skilled craftsmen who built them over 126 years ago. Two miles south of the Flat Creek Bridge, at milepost 5, was located the station known as Big Springs. It was at this point, on October the 16th in 1879, that 200 people and the railroad dignitaries witnessed the groundbreaking for the narrow gauge line. No depot was ever built here, but a passenger shelter provided comfort for the traveler. The name was later changed to Brown Springs, and it became a summer retreat and a picnic area for Sedalians. From Brown Springs, the grade follows Spring Fork Creek, where at milepost 6 was located a stop called White's, which was later renamed Valda. White's was a post office from 1892 to 1896, and Valda from 1901 to 1908. Valda once had a frame depot, which was later replaced with a passenger shelter and a cinder platform. The next station was Spring Fork at milepost 9. This view is looking north at Spring Fork with Highway B in the foreground. Spring Fork at milepost 9 had a store, stock pens, a rail siding, and a post office. The depot was a wheelless 34-foot boxcar, and it still exists today. The car body was left when the line was abandoned, and the local landowner used it as a storage shed. Over the years, nature had ravaged the old depot, and in 2005, Mr. D. Bokelman and his family decided to restore the depot. Here we see the circa 1890s boxcar depot being rebuilt by D. Bokelman and his father, Don. All the family, Mabel, Diane, and daughter Andrea, had a hand in the restoration. This is only one of a handful of such artifacts in the United States today, and thanks to the fine work of the Bokelmans, it will serve as an example of living history for future generations. Here we see the car in place, facing south on the main line. One mile south of Spring Fork, the railroad crossed the creek on a 60-foot Howell truss bridge, and here we see the bridge piers intact on a fine summer day in 2006. The next station south of Spring Fork at milepost 11 was Dumpville, named after George Dump, the local landowner. Dumpville had a post office from 1885 to 1905 and a small depot. The depot building still exists as part of a dwelling. The owner has marked the spot accordingly, and his driveway is the old roadbed. Also seen at Dumpville is an example of the original 1880 stone culvert on the left and the 1926 concrete replacement on the right in the main line. Dumpville was the last station stop in Pettis County. After crossing the Benton County line, a station called Mora was established by the railroad. Mora had a rail siding, water tank, stock pens, post office, a store, and a 14 by 16-foot frame depot. Later years saw a lumber yard established at Mora. Mora still exists today, anchored by its lumber company as shown on the right in this southern look down the main line. In this 1920 view, we see the depot at Mora and the station agent and his family. Shown are Mr. John M. Moss, his wife Emma, a daughter Inez, and a son Gudio. Moss was a station agent, lumberyard owner, postmaster, and later had a filling station there. He passed away in 1927 at age 57. Here we see a northbound train passing through Mora in 1944. South of Mora, the line crossed rolling prairie, and here can be seen one of the many concrete culverts that carried the rails over small streams and drainage ditches. The location is 1 mile north of where the line crossed under the Rock Island Railroad. In 1904, the Rock Island Railroad completed its line across Missouri from St. Louis to Kansas City. When it reached the Missouri Pacific Warsaw branch, it crossed the branch on a long fill and a steel bridge. When the line was abandoned in 1946, the Rock Island buried the bridge in cinders. Today, the Rock Island is a dormant entity, but the bridge abutments and fill over the branch are still in evidence. In this view from 1918, an eastbound Rock Island train is approaching the bridge over the Warsaw branch line. After crossing under the Rock Island, the grade descended into Coal Camp on a 1.96% grade with a 7-degree curve turning to the west. This combination of a steep grade and a sharp curve would plague the railroad operations until abandonment. Here we see the result of a derailment on February the 4th of 1913, just beyond the curve east of the creamery at Coal Camp. Both the conductor, Patrick Curran, and the engineer, Joseph Altamiller, were killed when the engine turned over on top of their cab. No one else was injured as the passenger car at the end of the mixed train remained upright. In this view from the 1930s, the morning train from Sedalia is seen passing the old mill building as it arrives in Coal Camp. The same site today shows the modernized mill building and the old grade to the left. This busy scene depicts the train arriving at Coal Camp shortly after the line was standard gauged in 1902. This view is from 1914. The train is no doubt a special for some unknown occasion, and the elegant automobile is a harbinger of the future highways that will seal the fate of the branch line. It is the spring of 1918, and World War I is raging in Europe. Here we have a contingent of Benton County recruits at Coal Camp. properly tagged and ready to board the waiting train that will start their journey to the battlefields of France. After leaving the depot, the grade continued to head west for about 1 mile, where it then turned sharply to the south again. Here's the grade as seen today west of the depot, beyond the crossing of Highway U. The grade then curved south again and is seen here at the crossing of Highway 52, 2 miles west and south of the coal camp station. It was at this point that the old roadbed of the Osage Valley and Southern Kansas Railroad was located. The Osage Valley in southern Kansas was chartered in 1857 and was to have run from where Tipton, Missouri is today to Warsaw and then south to Emporia, Kansas. The Civil War interrupted the building of the line, and the aftermath of the war made financing of the railroad difficult. However, the grading was completed between Warsaw and this site near Coal Camp. The Osage Valley in southern Kansas went bankrupt in 1873, and the roadbed became the property of Benton County. In 1879, the county agreed to give the old roadbed to the Sedalia, Warsaw, and Southern, on which to build the narrow gauge line. There was not an adequate water supply at the coal camp station location, but a copious spring was found west of where the grade crosses Highway 52 today. The tank shown here had its 25,000 gallons replenished from a reservoir fed by the spring. Today, the site west of Highway 52 shows no evidence of the water tank, the spring, or the reservoir. Leaving the Coal Camp Water Station, the grade proceeds southwest, following the east side of Coal Camp Creek. One mile south of the water station, the line crossed to the west bank of Coal Camp Creek, and here a plate girder bridge and a portion of the grade serve as a road bridge over the creek. This riveted boilerplate bridge replaced a 60-foot Howe truss bridge in 1889. After crossing the creek, the grade follows the stream on its north-northwest banks until it again crosses the creek some 2 miles from the last bridge. Here can be seen the piers of what was another 60-foot Howe truss bridge. The bridge piers, some of which, like the ancient temples of Rome, have been looted for their stones to be used for less noble building purposes. Once across the second Coal Camp Creek Bridge, the grade swung south and entered a picturesque valley, where at milepost 26 was founded a small community originally known as Blaine. When the railroad came, it was called Hanbury Station, and later to Melton, after Major Richard H. Melton, a Warsaw resident and one of the railroad promoters who secured mining rights at the site. Melton opened a mine in 1889, and others quickly followed suit, staking claims along the creek. The name was changed to Raymond in 1900 after Mr. George R. Raymond of Denver, Colorado, purchased a number of the mines and expanded the operations. The community once boasted 40 families, 2 stores, a post office, a hotel, a blacksmith, and had 8 different mines, producing lead, zinc, barytes, and traces of silver. Double-headed ore trains were not uncommon on the narrow gauge. The shafts were up to 250 feet deep with 1,000-foot drifts and were once promised to equal the riches of the mines found at Joplin, Missouri. In 1909, the mines changed hands again and the railroad named the site Tahoma. Mining continued until just before World War I, and when the ore veins were found to be exhausted, the mines were closed. Their remains can be seen today in piles of tailing waste, concrete foundations, and water-filled mine shafts. Leaving Raymond, the grade turns west, crosses the creek once more, and proceeds towards Lincoln. This crossing was on another 60-foot Howell Truss Bridge, and most of the bridge piers have been taken away. This view shows the grade as it goes west-southwest towards Lincoln. Portions of the grade in this area are used as field access roads by the local landowners. One mile northwest of Lincoln is the remains of a 125-foot-long wood pile and concrete bridge that once crossed a tributary of Coal Camp Creek. Today, pieces of this bridge can be seen where they were dumped along the right-of-way when the line was abandoned in 1946. After a series of sharp serpentine curves, the grade crosses Highway 65 and swings south, alongside and through the Lincoln Airport. Here can be seen the outlines of ties and black cinders in the fescue grass. The line was mostly ballasted with cinders from the supply at the Sedalia locomotive servicing area. These views are looking northeast towards the highway crossing and south towards the airport, where the line goes through many backyards in North Lincoln. Once beyond the airport, the grade enters the city of Lincoln at Lamine Street and passes through the Producers Exchange Mill. Here, on a 1,651-foot-long siding, was located 3 stock pens and a rail tie yard. This was the location of the Lincoln Depot, as seen today at the northeast corner of Cardinal Drive and Highway C, just north of the present-day Fire Department building. The front of the depot faced east, with the rail siding on the west side. The depot was originally a 16 by 32-foot frame building, but was replaced in 1889 with a 20 by 50-foot building shown in these views. The original depot was dismantled in 1889 and moved to the Schuyler Station, some 7 miles south of Lincoln. The water tank seen on the right hand of the photo is not the railroad's water tank, but belonged to the city of Lincoln. Here you see a pump that still occupies the same well site today at the corner of Cardinal Drive and C Highway. In this 1899 view, the platform at the Lincoln Depot is full of teachers awaiting the arrival of the afternoon narrow gauge train to Sedalia. The longest-serving station agent at Lincoln was John Jack Reeves. He came to the Missouri Pacific in 1906 and retired as a depot agent in 1939, passing away at age 69 in 1943. Mr. Reeves saw the high and low points of business on the branch and is pictured here at Lincoln in the 1920s holding the depot dog, with the branch section crew about to go out on their gasoline engine speeder and do a day's work on the branch. This photo was taken near the old Lincoln Fire Station in the year 2000 and shows the outline of ties in the grass. Here the line crosses Osage Street and proceeds towards Warsaw. The propane tank in the distance is where the switch to the rail siding was located. The new fire station driveway obliterated this site in 2002. Just outside the Lincoln city limits, the line turned 12 degrees to the south, crossing an area once known as Roderman's Grove. This was once a picnic spot for Lincoln, and many 4th of July were celebrated here as the trains passed to the east. Here the plow has removed the grade, and only a small remnant, some 150 feet long, is all that remains. Here can be seen the pieces of a concrete culvert that once bridged the small stream. The surface of the grade is solid cinders and coal clinkers, and the occasional rusted spike can be kicked up out of the ashes. Miles south of Lincoln, the grade is very much in evidence and is intact for about 2 miles. The building of a new Warsaw Airport runway cut off a section of the line, but what remains is used as field access roads by the local landowners. The fills and cuts of this section of the grade were laid down after the Civil War as the Osage Valley and Southern Kansas Railroad. This road, chartered in 1857, was delayed by the advent of the Civil War and then ran into financial difficulties in the early 1870s when all work was stopped. Benton County, which had bought railroad bonds, ended up with a railroad grade and no railroad. But thanks to men like Cyrus Newkirk of Sedalia and Judge James H. Lay of Warsaw, the grade was obtained by the Sedalia, Warsaw, and Southern Railroad, and the narrow gauge rails were laid down on it in 1880. These works are a mute testimony to the foresight of those 19th century leaders who brought development and prosperity to Pettus and Benton counties. "7 miles south of Lincoln was located a small settlement originally known as Failers after the landowner. In 1889 it was changed to Schuyler, and the depot, formerly located at Lincoln, was sited there. That depot burned down a few years later and was replaced by a boxcar similar to the one found at Spring Park. Schuyler had a store, a post office, stock pens, and a rail siding. Today the stock pens are still in use, and the historic site has been marked by the Benton County Historical Society. "1 mile south of Schuyler, the grade crossed Sterrett Creek on a 60-foot iron Howe truss bridge. These views show the grade in the bridge location today. The piers are silent watchtowers that still guard the mouth of Sterrett Creek as it enters Truman Lake north of Warsaw. On the approach to the bridge can be seen this concrete base. This is a telltale pole that was once hung with knotted ropes over the track to warn anyone riding on top of a rail car that a bridge was about to be encountered. Once across Sterrett Creek, the line entered a mile-long valley known as Lay's Flats, which today houses a state fish hatchery near Warsaw. Here in this next view we see a southbound train crossing Lay's Flats and entering Warsaw in the late 1930s. Once across the flats, the line approached the north bank of the Osage River. It first crossed a creek called Ramsey's Branch on a long earth fill and then a 150-foot long and 30-foot high pile trestle. This trestle, the remains seen here, was the site of a fatal wreck on November the 2nd of 1897 when the southbound train derailed and fell from the trestle. The engineer, John Miner, was killed, and the fireman, Charles McComas, and conductor, Mr. Bash, were severely injured. The only passenger on the coach was a Mr. Fred Schwetman, a stockman from Lincoln, and he was found to be only bruised and shaken up. Once across Ramsey's Branch, the grade followed the river into Warsaw, passing through what is called Grandview Beach today. Here, the grade is used to access the river for boat launching. Most of the residents of the area are ignorant of the rail bed's history, and most think it was just another road built by the developer. An original 1880 stone culvert still drains the grade, and cinders and rusted spikes mingle with the 21st century debris of beer cans and discarded fishing tackle. The grade, with its intruding trees, now forms a cindered boulevard along the Osage River. The line then crossed Highway 65 near where the Pizza Hut in Warsaw is located today, and then continued south of East Main Street, passing the old cemetery as shown here. To the west of the cemetery, the grade is visible near an industrial building, but has been obliterated by the houses and a business near where it crossed the town Branch Creek. The town Branch Creek was crossed by a wood pile trestle, the embankment of which can be seen today, as well as the grade to where the depot and a wide track for turning the engines was located. It's 1904 and the Osage is at flood, and we are standing on the town Branch Creek Bridge looking back towards the depot and the old mill building. This photo from 1905 shows the end of track at Warsaw with the depot and the wide track that was used to reverse the direction of the locomotive for its return journey to Sedalia. This is the view today of the Warsaw Depot site just west of the town Branch Creek Bridge. It is the spring of 1905, and this eager section crew is ready to depart the Warsaw station to start their day of maintaining the tracks between Warsaw and Coal Camp. The railroad at Warsaw was subject to seasonal flooding, and the depot, shown here at the foot of Main Street during the flood, had to be chained to a fixed object to keep it from heading down the river. In this Warsaw flood view from the 1930s, 3 boxcars are stranded on the water tank and stock pin siding. This 1892 flood view shows the narrow gauge line at Warsaw. Note the curious onlookers on top of the narrow gauge boxcar. Steam locomotives could tread the floodwaters if the track was still intact, and the sight of a train at sea was not an uncommon view at Warsaw. In 1943, the Missouri Pacific Railroad requested to abandon the Warsaw branch, but the Interstate Commerce Commission, citing the necessary wartime need for rail transportation, put off the request until 1946, when they finally gave their approval. In this photo, we see the last passengers on the last train from Warsaw on August 31st of 1946. Thus ended 66 years of rail transportation on the Warsaw branch. The only remaining locomotive that once served on the Warsaw branch can be seen at the National Museum of Transport in Kirkwood, Missouri. This engine, restored to its original 1889 condition and number, was once numbered 2707 and served with engine 2644 until the last days of 1946. It was donated to the museum by the Missouri Pacific Railroad in 1947. We hope you enjoyed your tour of the Sedalia, Warsaw, and Southwestern Railroad, and we want to acknowledge the following for their contribution to this presentation.